Hi, this is Kim Shanley for Tennis Reach. Today I want to start with our first quick tip on our Federer Forehand Paradigm series. And I call this Tai Chi Swings. Before we get into that, I want to remind our viewers where we're focusing here on the first part of the series, which is the swing portion of the Federer Forehand. So I define that as this position of the hand oriented this way in the slot for Federer, where he's actually driving forward and the tip of his racket is dropping. And so this is really when the racket begins to move forward and starts to swing around. And the swing portion ends about 12 to 18 inches past contact. After that, it's all follow through. So this is the critical stage of the swing or the stroke that we want to focus on. And there's a lot of things to learn as we get into this more. Here we're just looking at the swing phase of Federer's stroke from the release of the racket up and around from the dynamic slot position all the way to 12 to 18 inches past contact. Here you can see the start of the Federer swing phase, and with a photo side by side of the approximate orientation of the racket at the start of the swing. Here we see Federer squaring the racket to the ball and to the target. As Federer squares the racket to contact, you can see the ball direction going towards the target, but the swing path continuing in its arcing motion. This first quick tip I call Tai Chi Swings, and I got this concept from my master Tai Chi teacher, Gene Burnett, who you can find on geneburnett.com. He's a great teacher. He's taught me an enormous amount about the use of the body and whole body movement. Well, the essence of this idea with Tai Chi Swings is that we want to build this into an entire body motion, this stroke that we're building. And in particular, we need to build in the sequencing of the release of these different body parts as we move through the stroke. And one of the major principles is that we have to build lag into our swing. So in contrast to what I was arguing against the other day about sweeping and casting of the racket, where the racket tends to come and the hand and the racket arrive at the same point at contact, and then we close off, sweep around, closing the gate kind of syndrome that we've had. We don't want that. Instead, we were looking for the hips, the pelvis, the legs to drive through the stroke, just like we do in baseball and golf and in tennis. The hand is always ahead of the racket at contact, and the position of the racket is slightly lower than the hand, so that we can implement this leveraged torque and turn of the ball at contact, but not a closing of the gate, this horizontal unhinging action that we don't want. In this first picture of Djokovic, we can see the hips have already rotated through and the hand is lagging behind, with the hand slightly higher than the racket and the racket lagging behind the hand. Of course, we see the same thing with Rafael Nadal. More vertical lift perhaps in the hips, but again the same lagging position of the arm and racket. And then finally with Federer, of course, we see this once more. So this is the type of feeling that and orientation that we're trying to get on this swinging motion, with the body rotating and driving things from the lower body and the racket and arm following in a lag sort of orientation and feel. So how do we start getting a feel for this lagging action and the fact that our hips and pelvis and lower torso rotate through first, and our hand and then the racket follow after? This lagging effect that's so critical to a good swing. Well, first of all, we just have to get a sense of what we're talking about. Okay, what is a lag in the body and how does it feel? So this exercise is without a racket, knees spread in athletic position, slightly bent, about shoulder width apart, and we extend our arms, and we're going to do helicopters, rotate, but we're going to make sure we do a couple things right, that we don't twist our knees, okay? That means you have to be aware that you can't twist these knees very much, only 10% to each side. So we want to minimize that. There will be a little, we want to minimize that. And we want to realize that our hips turn about 45 degrees each way, and that our upper torso can turn, 90 degrees each way. So we're trying to identify these two different areas. So in Tai Chi arms and swings, we want the core of the body to generate the motion, not the arm. So what we're arguing against is this local body notion of the swing in which the arm and the shoulder are initiating, controlling, and dominating the action. We want the lower body to dominate this swinging action and the hand to lag and the racket lag behind that. So we have to understand what that feeling of lag is. And so this is one of the essences of Tai Chi that Gene Burnett taught me. He said, what's the difference between an everyday action and a Tai Chi action? Well, he says, an everyday action of a punch is looks like something like that, okay? Arm and shoulder action, you don't see much of my lower body doing anything. Or old-fashioned way, a roundhouse swing, it's all arm, and this is what we see in a lot of tennis swings, right? So what is a Tai Chi swing? Well, a Tai Chi swing is initiating one part of the body with another. In this case, it's the lower part of the body. And when we have a punch where we're engaging our whole body, it looks entirely different. We're getting down in our legs and hips, and then we're using our entire body to launch the shot, tremendously more powerful than this local body action. And the same with our swinging action. If we can get this dynamic of the body turning and lifting first and the arm lagging behind, we're way ahead of the game. So in order to do this, we first just want to do some basic helicopters with initiating the lower body action first and then let the arms swing behind it. Just to be loose, but if the hips suddenly turn, the arms are still going to be swinging. That shows that the lower body is doing the dynamic. If I were just doing this local, I could stop kind of any time. It's all done up here. But if it's done down here, then my arms are lagging behind the turn of my hips. Notice that my knees are not twisting that much. Of course, in the Federer Forehand Paradigm, we've been emphasizing that the basic stroke path of the racket and the arm is not a horizontal swinging gate action, but is an upward sweeping action, much more vertical than most players imagine. So it's hard to get this going a little bit, but we want to feel that the hips are turning here and here and here, and the arms are lagging behind. It looks a little crazy, I know, but you'll see how it matches up with the great forehands of the modern age, Federer, Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal. Now, certainly when we're swinging a golf club or a bat or a racket, we don't want our arms just loosey-goosey like loose whips. There is structure, there's some form to these actions, and it's not just like a wet noodle. But it's hard to practice this because the racket is so light that it tends to encourage us for this local arm action. So here's another little exercise you can add to this sequence. It's the 8-pound medicine ball, and we're basically just going to be using our body to throw it in this sort of upward sweeping action. And this is not unlike the release action that we're going to be focusing on in the next couple of lessons. It's not identical, but it comes similar. And the basic idea in this is that we're generating the power from keeping the hands basically in this slotted position
and then turning our hips first, and then arms come lagging afterwards, and then the release of the ball. So it looks something like this. And there's even a little bit of a spin, because that's what our hands do when we go through this windshield wiper action afterwards. There is a turning and releasing of the ball at contact when we square up, and then the hands keep turning. But the ball is already directed linearly towards the target. And I'll also provide a link how other coaches and thinkers on sports have thought about this action, including Ben Hogan, who is said to have the greatest golf swing of all time. If you go and look at his book of how he recommends to get this feel of release, he actually recommends this kind of throwing action of the ball, this sort of inside and then out action. So it's been studied and recommended by other people as well. But going back to the original idea, it's just a sense of feel of the lag of the body and the arms and the lower torso. Again, we can keep it sort of in the helicopter mode, where our hips are just generating this turning and swinging action of the arms. We can do this as a regular warm-up exercise in practice. It's great before a match to get loosened up, so we don't tend to get over tight and use this local arm action that we're trying to get away from. So it's a great warm-up in practice and for matches. And finally, if your opponent sees you doing this before you play a match and asks what the hell you're doing, you can say, well, you've been studying Tai Chi, and that should be at least worth a couple points in